Witch Trials Weekly, Video 13, April the 8th to April the 14th, 1692. Sarah Cloyce and the Proctors.
On Monday, April 11th, Deputy Governor Thomas Danforth and 4 assistants went to Salem to see the examinations being conducted by Judges Hathorne and Corwin. Sarah Cloyce's examination was first. As we said in an earlier video, she was one of Rebecca Nurse's sisters. When John Indian testified against her, she said, "You are a grievous liar." Mary Walcott said that Sarah Cloyce brought her the devil's book and said she only need touch it to feel better. Abigail Williams said that a group of about 40 witches met in the parsonage for a communion of the afflicted girl's blood. This communion was overseen by Sarah Good and Sarah Cloyce. Sarah Cloyce became so overwhelmed by the accusations being thrown at her that she sat down and asked for a glass of water before slumping in her chair in a faint. At this point, one of the girls cried, "Her spirit has gone to prison to her sister nurse."
Elizabeth Proctor's examination was next. She didn't hurt Mary Walcott, but Mercy Lewis and Ann Putnam Jr. were unable to speak, and Abigail Williams had her hand shoved in her mouth. John Indian said that she had come to him with the devil's book. Elizabeth's husband John Proctor watched this, muttering that if John were his slave, he would beat him. Elizabeth Proctor said that she was not a witch. "I take God in heaven to be my witness that I know nothing of it, no more than the child unborn."
Ann Putnam Jr. said Elizabeth Proctor's specter afflicted her before falling on the floor, supposedly when Elizabeth looked her way. She also said that Elizabeth Proctor brought her the devil's book or would make her servant Mary Warren do so. Suddenly, a silence fell upon the court before all of a sudden the girls broke out screaming, supposedly suddenly seeing John Proctor's specter. "There is Proctor going to take up Mrs. Pope's feet!" And up they went. "There is Goodman Proctor going to Mrs. Pope!" And she convulsed. The magistrates were amazed because the girls could supposedly see what John Proctor's specter was going to do before it was done. Sarah Cloyce and the Proctors were brought to Salem jail. The Proctors' children would be looked after by Mary Warren and Benjamin Proctor, John's eldest son from his first marriage. Elizabeth Proctor was newly pregnant, and this would help her later on by granting her a stay of execution, which would save her life. Edward Bishop beat John Indian to stop his seizures, thinking that his seizures were fake. The girls would later cry out against him. At this time, all the people being held in Salem prison were transferred to the Boston jail, including 4-year-old Dorcas Good, who would at least now be reunited with her mother. Relatives were allowed to travel with their family members to the prison. Now, Giles Corey was able to bring his wife Martha all the way to the ferry, but didn't have enough money to continue with her on the rest of the journey. He promised her he would see her next week. Unfortunately, this statement came back to haunt him because it was around this time that his specter started to afflict the girls. The specter of Abigail Hobbs of Topsfield also began to afflict some of the girls at this time. John Proctor's examination was held on April 12th in Salem town. John Indian, as well as Abigail Williams and several of the afflicted girls, began screaming that they saw John Proctor's specter sitting on one of the magistrate's laps. Mary Walcott was sitting there calmly knitting and simply stated that she saw him too. Mary remained calm throughout the rest of the examination while the rest of the girls were screaming and convulsing on the floor, before calmly stating, "There, Goody Cloyce has pinched me now." Later, after Reverend Samuel Parris finished reading his notes aloud to the court, Mary put down her knitting and started saying, "Oh, yonder is Goodman Proctor and his wife, and Goody Nurse, and Goody Corey, and Goody Cloyce, and Good's child. Oh, Goodman Proctor is going to choke me!" Thus she gagged and convulsed on the floor. On April 13th, John and Hannah Putnam were terrified because their 2-month-old baby was ill and having convulsions. A doctor was sent for, and he said that the baby was under an evil hand. John and the baby had grown ill after John had made a comment that he wasn't surprised that Rebecca Nurse and her sister Sarah Cloyce were witches, for he had thought that their mother Joanna Town had been.
This video was produced with special permission from the author, Marilyn K. Roach, and publisher, Cooper Square Press. The Salem Witch Trials, a day-by-day chronicle of a community under siege, covers the years 1692 to 1697 in detail. It also touches briefly on important and relevant events before and after this time. We are proud to carry all of Miss Roach's books and publications in our museum store. To get a copy for your personal research and enjoyment, please visit www.salemwitchmuseum.com.